Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Today we have a webinar of getting GDPR compliant with mask test data in a Salesforce environment. And I see that some people are already joining our webinar, so that's really great. I'm very, very proud of this webinar that we arranged together with Valori, a strategic partner of ours, in making it possible to have mask test data in a Salesforce environment. And today, two of the technical consultants of Valori will show you how they've done that. I want to give the floor in a minute to these colleagues of our partners of ours. But just before we start, I want to make sure, because it's a webinar, there's always a bit of lag. So if there are any questions, or if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. So we'll try to answer them after the webinar itself. So during the webinar, you may ask questions, but put them in the chat box. And at the end of the webinar, we will try to answer them directly. So if everybody is ready, I want to give the floor to Marco Den Haan and Jongman, who lead you through the Salesforce integrator with the DATPROF technology.
Well, thank you, Maarten, for having us and granting us the opportunity to have this webinar together with you guys. And indeed, we hope to give you some insights on the solution that we've created in order to anonymize data for Salesforce. Before we will continue, Marco and I will be sharing our thoughts about this. First, I will start off with a bit of background information about the company. We work for Valori to give you some insights on why we're doing this. Then Marco will explain more about the field and the expertise that we have, and how we managed to use that and to create a package. And then after that, I will explain the package and give you a live demo of it working. So, about Valori. I'm not going to read everything, but we are a full service testing company, knowing that testing is more than just executing a test, and having that we focus on all key areas that are needed to make sure that the quality is there. And we want to make sure that everybody gets all the information at the right time, at the right moment. And we do this for a lot of companies throughout all the industries. And even though we're mainly based in the Netherlands, we work with a broader focus throughout the Benelux, but also expanding to the States and the complete EMEA region. So, and as I said, we want to make sure that if we are being posted somewhere, or if we are solving some issues at a client, we want to make sure that the client gets the feedback as early as possible. And in order to do this, we have full stack testers. Full stack testers are the equivalent of full stack developers, but then with a main expertise on testing. So we know about databases, we know about codes and everything in between, and how to make sure that at the right time we should be able to give you the right focus. And as said, it's not only about testing, but it's way more. And in here you can see some of our Valori strategic partners, in order to make sure that we can tackle any given problem at a client. And amongst one of them, DATPROF is here with test data, which we use obviously quite a lot of companies in order to make sure that test data, which is a main priority of having correct environments, is being able to be used throughout the testing process. So, apart from knowing the process and then using the tools in order to be able to automate this kind of information, we also see that there are quite a lot of partners that we have, but we focus with these partners on solutions as well on Salesforce. Salesforce is one of the bigger platforms right now, and we have a team which is dedicated completely into Salesforce testing and making sure that companies that start using or are using Salesforce that they will get the proper value which they expected as well from the early beginnings. And we're always looking into solutions in order to help customers better. And one of these solutions is obviously the solution that we're presenting today, in which we are able to automate the anonymization of test data from Salesforce environments into the non-production environments of Salesforce, and staying in line with the entire chain. So end-to-end with other applications as well, because most companies don't use just one application, but are using multiple. So how do you keep in line and make sure that if you change something, that it is being changed correctly throughout the chain? And having that thought, we're always looking into the proper solution. So today it's about Salesforce and DATPROF, and from now on, Marco will continue and will take you through the process on how we managed to get to this solution. Marco.
Yeah, thank you. Having all these thoughts and having all these technology partners is, of course, as a result of the world we live in today. And if we look at this world, we see that we have quite a number of pieces which we need to put together. Some are big, some are small, but there are a lot. And not only are there a lot, they're moving at quite a pace, and that pace is only increasing. And whatever we do and how quick we do that, we also know that there will be changes to whatever we've implemented, but also to stuff we haven't implemented yet. And given these three indicators, there's even a layer on top of that, because everything we do is related to data and related to IT. At some point, I assume my refrigerator will know more about me than I know myself. So there's quite a lot to look at. And in this world, to keep up, we're on the clock. On the clock with our IT business to be able to release quickly and on time and on demand. And in order to do that, we're looking at automating that as much as possible. So looking at Salesforce, we know that we have, for instance, a production environment, and Salesforce is helping us in putting together sandboxes for our development. And we can have quite a number of them. But looking at any given sandbox, it also is the case, how do you want to, how do you call that? Forgot the word. In any case, you need to be compliant as much with your sandbox environment as with your production environment. And then you can think about quite a number of things. You can think about stuff like your customer care. As a company, you would like to take care of your customers in a certain way and in a certain manner, and you do that according to your corporate values. And continuing on that, you can also have some bigger thoughts which you need to fit in, like, what do I need to do to get anonymized data in my sandboxes? And how do you do that? Because if you're going to alter your data for your sandboxes, that will impact the teams who are working with those sandboxes. And these are, as mentioned before, quite busy with a number of things. And as they are busy with a number of things, they have a certain need for data, and that connects all of them. If you're looking at it the other way, so not from a team perspective, but from a data provisioning perspective, historically you have an application, a logic layer, and a data layer. And if we look at data provisioning, it's not from development to production, but most often we start at the production environment. And when we do that, most often we replicate the production environment along our testing environments. There you can impact those testing environments by anonymizing them. And you can do that, but that will also impact the teams working in those environments, because you're actually altering the data as they want to do their testing or do their development. So rather than doing that, you might think of a dedicated environment in which you can replicate your production data at any given point in time and be able to start doing your test data management, your anonymization in there. Having done that, you are capable of doing some different things. For instance, looking at your data provisioning for different teams and reserving them. Or you might even want to think about your synthetic data provisioning. And that also enables you to think about your testing environments differently, because if you can limit the data needed in a testing environment, you might be able to handle more environments and be able to give a certain team a dedicated environment. But the basic principle comes from one element, being that you have a anonymous data set at a given point in time, which you can provision, and you can start making choices as an organization. So with one element of anonymization, you can think about different data provisioning situations in which you can enable a team to do their provisioning all by themselves, for instance. Having said that, we're looking at anonymization and data provisioning on a data layer. With DATPROF, you are capable to design blueprints for them for every specific data set you want to provision, but you haven't yet made your users aware of that. They are on a total different level, being the application layer most often, and not so much on the data specific layer. if you have a user platform, which you are capable of executing those blueprints without knowing the data specifics. And you can even say, well, I want to do that as a whole, or I just want to limit that to data provisioning. Centralizing the users on which are working on a testing environment and not so much on a production environment can be real beneficial. And then you can start thinking about test data environments which you can configure and design as you see fit. So for instance, I am able to say, with the Salesforce, keeping the Salesforce in mind, that a certain user of a certain team can design a sandbox and apply data for a sandbox in a particular environment and nothing else than that specific environment. Joost?
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, having come to the place what Marco just explained, and being able to run blueprints with correct user rights so that not everybody can do anything, that is something which is familiar in Salesforce too, because not everybody can do everything in there. While you're working on implementing new user stories or feature requests or however you like to call it, you might need a separated environment in which you want to develop your new code or configure your new code, and depending on how you use Salesforce. But once you're doing that on a sandbox, you still need your data. So how do we get that piece of data from the production environment into your sandbox in which you are able to work and create new business value for your customers? Well, in this case, I'm explaining step one, which is an optional step. It's not mandatory to have it in here, but I'll come back to that later on. First, we will start with using the Salesforce production environment. And regarding that Salesforce production environment, we create a full copy sandbox. If we follow the guidelines of Salesforce and create a full copy, it is right away creating a Salesforce environment which is one-on-one, exactly the same as the production environment. It's taking everything from production, from a functional level, but also from a data level. So you're actually creating a secondary production environment. This is not something that you want to have in your development environment. You don't want your developers to see all the opportunities which are being run by the sales or by the service managers about customers. So you want to protect that piece of data. So and now we're starting to move towards the solution that we've created, because this is still normal Salesforce work. What we have created in DATPROF, combining runtime and privacy in this case, is that we created a package which is able to read all the information, the data information from the Salesforce environment. So right now it's reading from the full copy, but it could have been as well the production environment. If you do that, we need to think of some additional guidelines in the runtime environment. It still can be done, but it's reading the data from the full copy and it's creating basically a one-to-one copy inside a separated environment, a DATPROF environment, which is still to be handled as if production, because you're still working with production data in there. So we have our own DATPROF database in there. It's being filled with all the data from the full copy environment. And once it's there, we have a normal database, a normal relational database, which we can alter. So we can run our privacy scripts to anonymize the data which is in there, or to create subsets, or to combine those things, or do some additional scripting. The normal DATPROF solutions can be run once the data is there. At the time, then we are able and have created this anonymized data. It's still not in the environment, and we want to have it in the environment, so we can send it back to the full copy Salesforce environment. Well, that is already pretty awesome. I mean, this means that we can create an exact duplicate from the production environment, which we call our acceptance environment, and it's having all the same cases and all the same features from a data level, and it's anonymized. So nobody can tell if this account or person or whatever you have in there is the actual person or is a combination of something else. So it's anonymized. You can't say it's this customer anymore. Well, that's already one big step. But what if you have multiple teams and you want to create several sandboxes, or you need to maintain several environments? And because still a lot of companies are still using the DTAP approach, having the development environments connected, having the test environment connected, and the acceptance environment connected. Well, yeah, if you have to create a Salesforce full copy, you can only create one by the normal default settings in Salesforce. So you can only have one. So how do you get the data towards the other ones? Well, this package which we have created, we have added the intelligence in order to not just send back the anonymized data towards the original source, but it is also being able to be sent to another sandbox. So imagine that you have taken all the information from the production environment, you created this anonymized subsetted data set, and you have 3 environments to provision. You just create 3 pipelines within the DATPROF runtime, making sure that all the 3 environments and the sandbox environments are being provisioned with this new data set, or their specific data set. So everybody can work on the items that they need to work on to create that new value. So, and this grants you the opportunity to have an isolated environment for a developer with a tester to create new data, to create new functionalities, to change the configuration, to make sure that the business value is there without breaking a chain of environments or influencing other tests or being influenced by other people. So it's really granting you the opportunity to give feedback as early as possible, but also work as fast as possible. So how does this look inside an actual demo?
So as we just explained, we will show you the actual demo about how to anonymize the data in Salesforce. Before we start doing that, I will show you first our Salesforce environment, which should go on as a production environment for right now. So what I will do is I will log on to the Salesforce instance, and I will show you that we have a setup, an environment, including some data. So I will go to our sales tab in order to make sure that we can see our objects. We will start with the accounts. And right now I've already added 2 accounts. And obviously in your normal production environment, it would be many more accounts. But for now we will be able to work with just 2 accounts. So we have our account Valori and we have our account DATPROF. And for DATPROF, we don't have anything connected yet. So it's just a normal account having nothing on with it. Valori, however, if we open it up, we will have an opportunity. And it's connected to opportunity 1. So this account has at least 1 opportunity, or well, actually exactly 1 opportunity, but could have been more, obviously. So yeah, we have this opportunity, and if we click on this opportunity, we can see that it's in a particular state, and we could have added many more details in here. If we continue looking at our opportunities, there's just 1. So it's only this one. If I log out, I will show you our target environment. The target is the supposed sandbox that we want to fill with data. And I log on to this environment as well. And what we will see once we open the sales tab again is that we don't have any accounts in this environment. So the amount of accounts is empty, and the same applies for opportunities. So there are no accounts and there's no opportunity right now in this environment. So it's completely blank, which is very useful if you want to start up from scratch. But if you want to test something right on, you won't be able to do so. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at DATPROF runtime and the setup which we have created in there, including the package, in order to make sure that we copy the data from the production environment, anonymize it, and send it towards the sandbox environment. So in order to do that, we're going to take a few steps. What we first do is we go to our production environment, and what we say to runtime is, okay, start the project, in order to make sure that we download the metadata for the 2 objects which we have specified, which in our case are account and opportunity. And obviously this could be many, many more. It could be normal Salesforce objects, but it could have been custom objects as well, which are just created for just your environment. With the package how we created it, it's no big deal if you want to have custom objects in there as well. So what we did right now is, okay, we copied the objects, including the column names, actually the fields from these objects. So we created a database locally on the machine. It could have been somewhere else as well, but we created a database containing these 2 objects, including all the columns. But it's an empty database. So what we want to do right now is that we run an extract in order to make sure that we download all and the accounts and opportunities from the production environment into our own local database for right now. And that's what we did. So what we have right now is the database and having it filled with data. But still our sandbox environment is empty. So if you look in here, accounts are still empty and opportunities are still empty. Because as I said, we copied it to our local environment. So what we are going to do is, before that we are going to send it and upsert it to the sandbox environment, is that we have to anonymize the data. So we have a script, which is just a temporary script for the demo actually. But we have a script which anonymizes the data in our database. So, and we will see that for the accounts, once we have run it, it will be masked. So it won't be the data as it was before from production. And bear with me, but we're using developer edition environments, which imply that there is already some data in it, and it just can't be seen right now in the original source. So once we looked earlier to the environment which we called production, we only have seen DATPROF and Valori as accounts, but there are more entries below it which can't be deleted. It can't be removed from the trash. So eventually there will be more in the new target. This won't be the case, obviously, in your actually performance, production, and your sandbox environment. But what this job did is it masked the data which is in there. So our database, which we just have created from production, filled it with the data from production, is now anonymized. And now we're going to upsert the data. But this is a bit more tricky, since Salesforce doesn't allow you to reuse the IDs from the original environment. Every environment should use its own unique set of IDs. And if you are going to create new data, Salesforce will create the IDs for you. So we have the accounts, and below the accounts we have the opportunities. So inside the opportunity object, there's a relationship with the accounts. So this particular relationship is bound by the account ID. So what we have is several phases on how to observe data. And this could be changing per user, per customer, per organization. In our case, we have our first step to upsert our data to the sandbox environment. And this one in step 1 is just going to do this for the accounts. And the reason why we have to do this is we're going to upsert them right now, and which means that do an update if there is already an account, which there isn't, so make it an insert. And once you've made it an insert, Salesforce will create the new IDs. And what we need to do is we need to reuse those IDs in our solution. And we have it. So what we just did is, okay, we've created the accounts in our new environment, and I will show you that the opportunities are still empty, and the accounts, ta-da, here they are. 12 original ones from the developer edition, including the 2 from DATPROF and Valori, which are number 3 and 4. Because those are the only ones, sorry, not 3 and 4, 4 and 8. The only one with 6 asterisks and having no other details available except for the account side for Valori. So what we can see is that we copied the content from the developer edition and have sent it to our new sandbox environment. But we have it masked, so nobody is able to tell anymore what actual customer this was. And obviously, in a normal situation, we will run our through in-depth account templates in order to make sure that once we mask the data, it is still usable, because nobody can understand the difference between number 3 and number 4 if you're just looking at the amount of asterisks. We have normal templates, but given the demo, we will just make sure that you can see that something has changed in here, which it obviously did. But yeah, we have the accounts, but we don't have opportunities yet. And so we have come up with a solution in order to make sure that the opportunities will be filled with the newly created IDs. So we're now updating all the account IDs. And obviously, if you have 3 or 4 starting objects to run with, it would have been these 3 or 4 objects to be updated. So not just the account ID, but let's say case IDs as well. So this job is running, and right now what we did is we updated all the account IDs from the old ones to the new ones. And since we have done that, our opportunity can now be upserted and be connected to the newly created account ID as well. So I go to sandbox. Again, I'll run the upsert, and this time we will just do it for only opportunity instead of accounts. It's taking a few seconds, and voila. And the sandbox should be filled as well with the new opportunities. And again, in here, we will see that all the new opportunities are being created, including those which were originally already in the old one but were deleted. But in here, we can see that our opportunity number 1 is still being sent to the new sandbox environment, and it's still being connected to our account, the account which we called Valori, and it's here. It's connected. Here's the proof. It's connected to the account which has the account site www.valori.nl. So we have anonymized the data from the production environment into the sandbox while remaining the functional integrity of the data as well. And right now we did it for accounts with opportunities, but as said and as promised, we can do this with any object as long as we can access the data within Salesforce. So if you have custom objects or created some new fields for already existing Salesforce objects, we can read it, we can anonymize it, and we can send it to the sandbox environment. So yeah, this is what we can do in order to make sure that your accounts and your sandbox environments will be filled with new data.
This actually concludes this demo. We are able to reuse the data from the Salesforce production environments to make sure that it is being anonymized. It doesn't matter if you want to have in one sandbox or 20 sandboxes or in 100 stretch orgs, it can be done. It's not a problem. And of course, it works with the normal Salesforce objects, but everything which you have created yourself in your own Salesforce environment, custom objects, they work as well. As long as you make sure that the dependencies are being set correctly with the follow-up of the upsert solutions. And apart from that, as I just said on the last part, you can connect your data from Salesforce together with, for instance, the SAP or the Pega platform or some standalone platform applications that you have created yourself. And you can sync the same data throughout the end-to-end chain. And then this concludes our demo, and I can see that there are some questions.
Well, there are some questions, and I think there's one from Andrew. I guess using the separate DATPROF environments gets around to the triggers generation problems in Salesforce. I think you mentioned it a little bit, but can you maybe try to answer or give a comment on the remark of Andrew?
Yeah, well, that is one thing which is pretty difficult, so to say. And the Salesforce triggers are indeed something which you have to keep in mind. And not every trigger is being bypassed. And that has to do with how Salesforce reacts to loading data. I don't know if Andrew is familiar with, for instance, DataLoader.io from Salesforce itself, in which you can load your CSV, map it to the Salesforce fields. If you're doing that, it can trigger some triggers as well. And this basically does the same. Right now, we don't, how do you say it? We don't disable the triggers, but it is something that we are aware of and which we are always taking into account once applying this. And I hope this answers Andrew's question.
Yeah, and the last, there's another. He said thanks. That's perfect. Well, we have another question of Dennis, but he unfortunately need to leave the room. But we can maybe there are other people also waiting for an answer. When you copy the production into a Salesforce test environment, do you also copy the table ID numbers from production to Salesforce test environments, sandboxes?
I would like to have a talk with him regarding what he implies with the table IDs, because I can interpret it in multiple ways, which is difficult.
Yeah.
If we're just talking about the data itself, then we're updating all the IDs to new ones if we're going to another sandbox environment.
Yeah, Salesforce is also automatically updating the data itself, right? If you go to another sandbox.
Yeah, if you insert data inside a new Salesforce environment, it's automatically creating new IDs, which is obviously good because you don't get duplicates that way. On the other hand, it's making it a bit difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm reading Bert's reply, and in that case, indeed, it's the ID of the row, and that one is being updated or actually created as a normal sequence would do in a relational database. So you don't have anything to say about that one. If you insert something into a new environment, Salesforce mandatorily creates a new ID for you. There's no way to bypass that one.
No, which isn't really needed. But
No.
you need to make sure that you don't do any masking rules on the ID itself.
Correct, because you need to have that one in line with the old environment, old IDs with the new IDs in order to map it to other objects.
Great. Well, these were all the questions, I guess. If there are any other questions left, then I would like to thank you, Joost and Marco, and all the attendees for joining this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought it was useful. And if there are any questions left, there are ways of contacting us. We will send you an email to contact either Valori or DATPROF for more information. And if there isn't anything left, then I would like to thank you for your time and wish you a nice and pleasant day.